Good evening and welcome to Story Hour. I'm Laura Blackwell, tonight's host. My co-host, Daniel Marcus, started Story Hour at the beginning of a shelter-in-place order to help people remain connected while we're apart through stories. So here we are, 2021, still sheltering in stories together. Welcome back to those of you returning, and welcome to those of you joining us for the first time. As always, we have two writers reading for their favorite nonprofits. Tonight's readers are Cliff Winnig and Madeleine Robbins. If you are fortunate enough to help others during this time, please consider a donation to tonight's featured nonprofit, the American Bookbinders Museum. Both of our readers are reading tonight for the American Bookbinders Museum. This is a first, two on the same nonprofit. The American Bookbinders Museum is the only bookbinding museum in North America. The ABM celebrates the history, tools, and process of Western bookbinding. At ABM, you can see how books were bound by hand until the 19th century and marvel at the first machines that automated bookbinding. ABM also provides hands-on experiences for scholars, makers, and passionate book lovers that furthers their understanding of the art and craft of bookbinding. Once you visit, you will never look at a book the same way again. That sounds like a fun challenge. If you're here on Zoom, feel free to leave your camera on. It's really nice for our readers to see their audience, but please do mute your mic if you have not. And we have a text chat on the side that you can chime in on. But if you're joining us on Facebook, I'm sorry, but no one is seeing your messages right now. So our first reader tonight is Cliff Winnig. Cliff Winnig writes science fiction, fantasy, horror, weird Western, and related genres. His short fiction has appeared on the Escape Pod podcast and in several anthologies and magazines, including Straight Outta Deadwood, which was nominated for a Colorado Book Award, and Footprints, and the winter 2020 issue of Mad Scientist Journal. When not writing, Cliff plays sitar, studies Aikido and Tai Chi, and sings in two choirs. He lives with his family in Silicon Valley, which constantly inspires him to think about the future. He can be found online at cliffwinnig.com. Cliff, welcome. Please unmute yourself.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm going to read a couple of short works, and if there's time, maybe some very short works in the middle. The first one is called Kraken's Wake, and it appeared in a book called Cinema Spec, edited by Karen A. Romanko in I think 2009, roughly there, 2008, 2009. Kraken's Wake. Sandra Lynn Dutta began having doubts a few minutes into the first take. Given her co-star, few would have blamed her. A kraken lived for centuries, possibly millennia. No human had ever gotten one to admit just how long. But every colonist on Proteus knew which one had lived the longest. Old One had been willing, so the planet's most ancient kraken had been cast to play herself. Only very young kraken had ever acted in films, and none of them had been willing to play Old One. Sandra's director could have gone with a virtual kraken, shot the underwater scenes in studio. It might even have looked more like the footage from the original dive. But the studio craved the authenticity angle and had hired a director who agreed. So Sandra followed the real Old One down into the depths of the world sea, into ever deepening gloom. The aquatic camera bots trailing her failed to relieve her sense of isolation. The further she got from other human beings, even from larger robots that might extract her, the more nervous she became. She chided herself for such nebulous fears. It's not as if the real Alice Chowdhury hadn't been scared half to death when she swam with Old One. She'd had no idea where Old One was leading her. Preparing for the part, Sandra had read Chowdhury's writings, as well as half a dozen books on kraken psychology. Not that the psychologists agreed with one another or with Chowdhury's insights, but Old One had a contract with the studio. As far as Sandra knew, kraken always honored their contracts. A gargantuan tentacle brushed against her smart-suited leg. It coiled away in front of her, urging her to greater speed. greater depth. Her replica of Chowdhury's smart suit held the latest technology. It could withstand greater pressure, but it still had to look like the original. That meant swimming manually. I've trained for this. I'm ready. Down into darkness she swam, following tentacles that curled around one another. She knew Old One had exactly 34, but their sizes, textures, and functions varied. Some of those functions were still unknown. Her retinal prompter highlighted her first line, so she blinked on her microphone. Her amplified voice boomed shockingly loud in the vastness. 200 meters, Old One. My suit can go no farther than 5. Several tentacles twitched in time with her words, just like in the original footage. Though Sandra had watched that footage dozens of times, seeing it happen in front of her, around her, felt altogether different. One of the tentacles stretched out, probed Sandra's back, head, and stomach with a gentleness that would not have seemed possible. Then came Old One's rich, somehow grandmotherly voice. Your suit will hold, Alice Chowdhury. I can feel its strength. Still, we should go faster. May I carry you? Yes, she said with the same inflection that Chowdhury had used, half fear, half excitement. Yet she found herself thinking of Fay Ray as a tentacle wrapped itself around her. A moment later, she felt water whooshing past. Darkness enveloped them. As Chowdhury had done, Sandra blinked on the smart suit's external lights, catching the writhing mass of tentacles with its faint red glow. Her replica suit cam wouldn't record very much, but the robots could film in the dim artificial light. 300 meters, her suit told her. Her newer model was rated to 800, though the sunken city where Old One had taken Chowdhury lay a little past 6. 400 meters. 5. 6. Now Old One would be slowing down, unwrapping her and letting her smart suit's lights play across the ruined city, built not by the Kraken, who had no need for such structures, nor by any other native species. The first colonists on Proteus had not been human. But Old One didn't slow down. 700 meters, her suit told her. The director yelled, "Cut!" in her ear, but the sound seemed distant, static already obscuring the voice. While her suit had been rated to 800 meters, her antenna had not, she remembered. "Old One," she shouted, but this time no tentacles twitched, at least none she could see. She thought of how badly she'd wanted this part and the fame it would bring. Would she be famous now for disappearing? 800 meters. Still, they hadn't slowed down. Panic welled up inside her. "My suit, Old One! It's only rated to 800 meters!" She tried slipping free from the Kraken's grasp. She feared swimming back on her own, but her transponder worked at 700 meters. They'd scoop her up then, wouldn't they? Once safe and sound, she'd have a word with her agent. But Old One didn't let her go. The tentacle squeezing just tight enough to prevent her escape. "Do not worry, Sandra Lynn Dutta. I can feel your suit's strength as well as I did Alice Chowdhury's." 900 meters. She felt water pressing in on all sides. Were her fingers and toes tingling? Sandra managed to swivel her head and look back at the Kraken's wake. The camera bots no longer followed. Either they'd fallen behind or had refused to dive past their own maximum depth. "What?" she began, unable even to phrase a question. "Yes," said Old One, "the cameras no longer pace us. I swim alone now." 1,000 meters, 1,050. Finally, Old One had begun slowing down. At just over 1,100 meters, she stopped, uncoiling from around her passenger. Blackness. Sandra blinked the smart suit's light to full capacity, but she saw nothing more than herself and nearby bits of her captor. Then the tentacles pulled away, leaving her alone. Old One, she tried to shout through the microphone, but it came out as a croak. I am here, Sandra Lynn Dutta. Old One's voice sounded farther away, but at least she could hear it. Could Old One's meter-wide eyes see her at this depth? Even now? Could she find her again and take her back up while she still had air? Should she make for the surface? Where are we? Sandra asked aloud. Why are we here? We are at a gate. It is small, but it floats not far below you. If you swim down, you will pass through. A gate? In the middle of the open ocean? Yes. Her mind started racing. She felt lightheaded. Whose gate? The first colonists. They made a gate? Yes. It leads to their current home. Why didn't you tell us about this before? Why didn't we find it? No one before you has impressed me enough, save Alice Chowdhury, and her suit would not have survived this trip. As for finding it, that is a mathematical problem. The world sea contains vast lengths, widths, and depths. One small gateway is hard to locate, even if you know it exists. Sandra would definitely have a talk with her agent. Fame or no fame, she wanted out. Take me home, Old One. I don't want to be here. Silence. Sandra felt the relentless press of the ocean, imagined her smart suit straining against it. How long could it hold out at this depth? Already, angry red lights blinked in her field of vision. I have chosen you, came the voice, even quieter this time. Had Old One swum farther away? Would she abandon her? But I'm not like Chowdhury. I'm an actress. She fought back the hysterical urge to add, it's all make-believe. You took on her role, Sandra Lynn Dutta. You rode with me into the depths. Go a little farther. You can still act upon your return, but you can make history first. History. The thought cut through her fear. For the first time, it occurred to her that someday someone might wind up playing her. She discovered she liked the idea. First contact, more than even Alice Chowdhury had accomplished. Were they friendly, the first colonists? A pause, though a short one. They were as you. Not exactly reassuring. Will you come with me? I cannot. The gate is too small. Her suit blinked a fresh warning. She'd used 40% of her oxygen. Now or never. Sandra took a deep breath before speaking. All right, Old One, I'll go. I shall guide you, though you will pass through the gate alone. With a bubbling whoosh, the tentacles returned, flowing past her suit's lighting and back into darkness. She felt, rather than saw, the Kraken pass her on the way down. Sandra dove after her, following in her wake. Thank you. So that story is like about 2009, but I've just doing the final edits on a prequel, which is Alice Chowdhury's story. So you find out all about that, and that's almost novella length, much longer piece. So I'm going to be sending that out soon, and we'll see what happens. The next one I'm going to read now for something completely different, as the Pythons would say, is in Mad Scientist Journal, the 2021 that was alluded to earlier. And the shtick with Mad Scientist Journal is that all the stories are, the Mad Scientist Journal is the academic journal mad scientists send their papers to. And all the stories are written by mad scientists as narrated to the author. So my story is written by, what's my character's name? Carla Vasquez. And so everything is in her voice as compiled by me and sent off to Mad Scientist Journal. All right. Preliminary field observations of the Los Gatos obelisk. February 14, 2019. I can assert with reasonable confidence that the obelisk's appearance was sudden, perhaps even instantaneous. What we know for certain is this. Residents of the 400 block of San Benito Avenue in Los Gatos, California, woke shortly before 9 a.m. to a loud humming coming from the street. All the residents woke at once, in fact. They each got out of bed, or in one case, rolled off a living room couch, left their various residences, and walked toward the obelisk, which hovered above the center of the street. One overnight guest's presence caused a significant consternation on the part of a resident's spouse who was returning from a night shift at work, but so drawn were the residents to the obelisk that this issue was noticed only after the fact. Once in the center of the street, residents joined hands and chanted "Welcome" in several languages. Some of these languages, including, it was later determined, Etruscan and Old Akkadian, were not spoken by any of the residents, but were reconstructed phonetically later from memory. The team from the California Institute for Extreme Archaeology, CIXA, arrived at 10:17 a.m., having been tipped off by a diligent member of the Los Gatos City Council who participates in the Institute's popular local politician rewards program. As the only doctoral candidate present, I began supervising the undergraduate assistants under the watchful eye of Dean Martha Blum, who holds the Institute's prized H.W. Jones Chair in Archaeology. February 17th, 2019. Over the weekend, our team took a number of measurements. The Los Gatos Monte Sereno Police Department did an excellent job of traffic control at the behest of the Institute's friends on the Los Gatos City Council. So the measurements were obtained were quite specific and confirmed as unchanging across 2 days. The obelisk hovered 37 centimeters above the street. Its height, not taking into account the hovering distance, is 18.27 meters. Each side is 87 centimeters wide at the base, gradually tapering to 63 centimeters before the 47 centimeter high crowning pyramid begins. It is a uniform ruddy tan and appears to be carved from a single block of stone. Please see Figure 1 for a diagram. At the suggestion of Dean Blum, I continued to use the term obelisk because of the object's shape, even though the writing on the sides is most definitely not hieroglyphs belonging to any known Egyptian dynasty. The letters or pictograms carved into the obelisk's sides, we are still not entirely sure which they are, as they seem to be abstract but possessing certain biological features, such as membranes, hair, and teeth. Rearrange themselves when the obelisk is not being directly observed, often with new carvings appearing in place of others that have vanished entirely. In no case have we recorded the repetition of any particular carving. Thus far, they are all unique. On Sunday, we set up a system of web cameras to continuously monitor all sides of the obelisk. Once recording began, the carvings did not change in any way until a 3-second network glitch occurred. When recording resumed, the carvings on all 4 sides appeared very different. One undergraduate described the new letters or pictograms as even more disturbing than the old ones. I would have to agree. Please see Figures 2 and 3 for examples. The obelisk hums at about 87 hertz, a noise that is constant except in the presence of nearby canines. When approached by a dog, it barks. The Los Gatos Monte Sereno Police Department, while doing an admirable job of controlling motor traffic, has been less successful at stopping pedestrians out walking their dogs, this being a residential neighborhood. February 18, 2019. An expert dog breeder brought in by Dean Blum has declared that the obelisk's bark most closely resembles that of a large German Shepherd, or sometimes, particularly in the mid-afternoon, of a Welsh Corgi. It is most definitely not barking like a poodle, he said, despite the repeated claims to the contrary by one dog-owning resident of the block. February 19, 2019. This morning, 2 of the undergraduate assistants scheduled to work today called in sick, complaining of headaches and nausea. One said she'd woken up screaming but was unable to remember her dreams. A quick consultation with the field team's medical officer resulted in recommendations for Tylenol and Dramamine as needed. The officer also slipped me a vial from the Institute's cache of sleeping potion, obtained by its 1995 expedition to Papua New Guinea. She said it would help the undergraduate who'd woken up screaming, and she asked me to bring it by her apartment. I did not, however, as I too have woken up screaming for the last 3 mornings, following nights filled with a dark, dreamless sense of dread. Fortunately, I have not suffered from headaches or nausea. For this reason, I cannot help thinking the obelisk likes me. As absurd as that sounds, although I admit I find the thought pleasing. February 2019. The sleeping potion has not proven efficacious. Also, my cats, Akhenaton and Neferneferuaten, have taken to sleeping in the living room rather than curling up with me on my futon. I miss them, but I find my time spent with the obelisk to be increasingly rewarding. Every morning I look forward to getting dressed and driving out to the field, then spending the day basking in its humming glory. February 21, 2019. This morning I woke up screaming earlier than usual, 2 hours before dawn, so I got dressed and went to the field. As a result, I was present at 5:57 a.m. when the obelisk changed from its usual ruddy tan to a glowing fuchsia. Literally glowing. One resident woken by the light said it was the equivalent of roughly 300 watts, but I can't confirm that as we didn't have accurate measuring equipment sensitive to wattage. At 6:49 a.m., when the first rays of dawn struck the top of the obelisk, it reverted to its normal color. For the rest of the day, its behavior was otherwise unchanged. On a personal note, I felt great reluctance to leave the field this afternoon, even after Dean Blum called and insisted I meet with her in her office to discuss the progress of my dissertation. I had missed, she said, our appointment the previous morning. I managed to tear myself away from the beauteous artifact that is the obelisk and return to campus. Unfortunately, Dean Blum does not approve of making the Los Gatos obelisk the subject of my dissertation. The fieldwork is too facile, she said. It doesn't even involve swinging from vines over alligator pits, so how will anyone take it as serious archaeological work? I pointed out that the object is unique and that its study might lead to a whole new branch of archaeology, but she replied that archaeology concerns itself with ancient things. This object, she said, had just appeared the previous week. With great reluctance, I agreed to continue working on my previous dissertation topic, which involves the much less satisfying Egyptian obelisks uncovered in a lost city in Central America. I nonetheless plan to continue taking these notes for the good of the scientific community and for possible publication in book form after I have achieved my doctoral degree and a tenure-track post at a good university. February 22nd, 2019. Due to an unavoidable family obligation, I was not able to visit the field today. The undergraduate assistants who were present reported a green light at the very top of the obelisk that blinked, seemingly for random durations, intermittently from 1:42 to 3:14 p.m. I am furious that I was unable to observe this behavior in person, but I look forward to reviewing the video footage. February 23, 2019. Last night, as I lay in bed anticipating the horrid void my nights have become, an image of the obelisk appeared above my head and hovered there. How can I describe my joy? If the Blessed Virgin Mary had appeared surrounded by saints and angels, it could not have been more sublime. I basked in its numinous presence for several minutes before it vanished. Afterward, I fell quickly into the hideous non-being of dreamless sleep, but I woke up feeling refreshed. Once the screaming stopped, that is. February 24, 2019. This morning, I arrived first at the field to discover one of the undergraduate assistants asleep with his body half inside the obelisk, despite the fact that the obelisk seems to consist of a single stone block with no visible entrances or even a hollow interior. That last observation cannot be proven, as we are unable to weigh the hovering mass. The torso, head, and arms of the unconscious undergraduate dangled from about halfway up one side. Sadly, the web camera facing that side had failed sometime during the night, so we do not know when or how he arrived there, or how he came to be buried waist deep in seemingly solid stone. With the help from the Santa Clara County Fire Department, I was able to scale a ladder on to his side and shake him awake, at which point he grabbed me by the shoulders, stared into my face with hollow, sunken eyes, and shouted, "Not now! Not now! It isn't fair!" The obelisk then ejected him. He flew past my right shoulder and into a nearby hedge with a force that, thanks to footage from the 3 remaining web cameras, we later calculated to be that of a cannon. The undergraduate did not suffer any serious injuries, though the neighbor whose property he landed on said she plans to bill the institute for the cost of replacing her damaged hedge. Upon being questioned, the undergraduate claimed he could not remember why he had said those words when I woke him, or even that he had spoken them. The field team's medical officer used several institute-approved interrogation techniques to no avail. Despite witnessing these techniques, I find myself envious of that undergraduate assistant. Though he cannot remember the experience, for a blessed, all too brief time, he almost achieved oneness with the crowning glory that is the Los Gatos obelisk. February 25, 2019. Defying a restraining order from the Los Gatos City Council, representatives of the nearby Rosicrucian Egyptian Museum attempted to haul away the obelisk, which continued to hover 37 centimeters above the center of San Benito Avenue. They tried ropes, chains, and even spikes, overpowering me and my undergraduate assistants and pinning us to the ground while we screamed curses into the uncaring sky. Fortunately, all their attempts failed. The objects they assaulted the wondrous obelisk with passed through it as if they or it had no physical substance. Though the letters or pictograms, if that is indeed what they are, covering the sides of the obelisk remain mysterious and wholly untranslatable, I cannot help but imagine an accusing tone in those new ones that appeared while members of the museum team blocked parts of the obelisk's side from our web cameras. Fortunately, I had a representative of the Los Gatos City Council on speed dial, and I was able to activate my phone and call him even as I lay pinned by a burly Rosicrucian operative. Members of the Los Gatos Monte Sereno Police Department arrived with admirable alacrity and arrested the would-be obelisk thieves. This evening, as I write this, my head is full of revenge fantasies. They will remain unrealized, however, as I must always exhibit proper professional behavior, at least until I have my doctoral degree and tenure. February 28, 2019. After 2 normal days of observations in the field, I am happy to report waking up from a restful, dream-filled slumber. The obelisk came to me in my sleep. It told me that, though it is leaving our world today, it has decided to take me with it. Soon, it promised, I shall be its greatest disciple, announcing its arrival on 1,000 worlds. Then, it said, my life would at last have real meaning. I am putting these notes in an envelope and sending them to your journal in the hopes that you will publish them so that they can provide a beacon for future generations of archaeologists and others with an interest in that which gives rise to awe and wonder. Someday, perhaps, my obelisk will return to this world, and I will meet with these future students of obelisk lore, teaching them and showing them the way to true fulfillment and happiness. In the meantime, I have left extra food and water for Akhenaton and Neferneferuaten. Please ask someone to check on them for me. And then the author's biographical note. Carla Vasquez was, and presumably still is, somewhere in the cosmos, a doctoral candidate in the Obelisk Studies Department of the California Institute for Extreme Archaeology, CICSA. Her dissertation, Middle Kingdom Egyptian Obelisks Mysteriously Present in a Lost City in Central America, a Structural Approach, remains incomplete, but this publication anticipates enjoying the read when it is ready. Because of her continued absence, Ms. Vasquez's cats, Akhenaton and Neferneferuaten, have been adopted into a good home. In letters previously written to this publication, Ms. Vasquez has expressed interest in obelisks, her cats, and late-night reality TV about UFO abductees. She tells us she believes time is not cyclical. Rather, she writes, it is square. Thank you.
Oh, Cliff, that was delightful. I'm really wondering what the curriculum for the Institute of Extreme Archaeology looks like.
I'm sure it involves practice swings over alligator pits.
I hope so. It does seem like it would have a lot of parkour, Ninja Warrior type stuff in it.
And possibly, bullwhip training.
Yeah, also maybe something on breaking irreplaceable vases while hiding from enemies. That's always an important one.
Replacing statues with sandbags of equal weight and eyeballing sand. That's practical archaeology skills.
I mean, much more useful than, I don't know, learning how to use calipers or something. Certainly.
Calipers, come on. We don't need no stinking calipers.
Oh, well, thank you, Cliff. Now,
Thank you.
in between our readers, a lot of the time we almost always need to just take a pause and let the first few stories sink in. And then we can move on, because the next story is always so different when it's from a different writer. Our next reader is Madeleine Robbins. Madeleine Robbins has been a nanny, an administrator, an actor, a swordswoman. She has trafficked book production, edited comics, and repaired hurt books. She's also the author of New York Times notable urban fantasy The Stone War, Daredevil, The Cutting Edge, historical novel Sold for Endless Rue, and alt-Regency noir mysteries Point of Honor, Petty Treason, and The Sleeping Partner, as well as a double handful of short stories in Asimov's and the Magazine of Fantasy and Science Fiction. Currently operations manager at the American Bookbinders Museum, she lives in San Francisco with a geriatric dog, a husband, and a ferocious lemon tree. Welcome, Madeleine.
Thank you. Am I muted or not muted?
You are no longer muted.
Oh, I pushed the right button. I'm so excited.
This is a strong start.
Yeah, well, we like to start strong whenever possible. This is an older story because I seem to be writing longer stories as I go along, and I did not want to step on Cliff. And it was written under the influence of Kenneth Branagh's 1994 version of Frankenstein, when my older daughter, who is now, God help us, 30, was about 2. Why this matters will become, I hope, clear. It is called Willie. It was originally published in the Magazine of Fantasy and Science Fiction in December of 1990. It can't be 1992, but maybe it was 1992. The night is stormy. Each time the sky lightens, the air in the lab is filled with static. The doctor did not intend to work so late, with the sky acting out a melodrama over the parking lot. But everything has come together at this time, and he and his assistant stand together in the lab, staring at the thing on the table. Finally, the doctor signals, and the assistant throws a switch. A charge passes through the coils of wire, elaborate structures, at last to the thing on the table. It quivers violently until the current is turned off. The lab is silent except for the breathing of the doctor and his assistant. Then, a beep. Another. As the EKG chitters, the doctor and his assistant look at each other, awed. It's alive, the doctor murmurs. Then loudly, it's alive! He is overwhelmed, the culmination of his years of work, vindication of his theories. It's almost too much for him. The thing on the table stirs slightly. It is a hodgepodge of spare parts, some acquired from organ banks, others cloned. It is not pretty. The doctor's skill is not in surgery, and there are scars and sutures, quite visible, all over its body. The thing shudders and opens its mouth. The assistant looks nervously at the restraints, as if fearful the thing will break free. The bonds hold. From the mouth of the thing comes a noise, rusty and spasmodic, almost a bleating. The thing is crying. What? The doctor asks vaguely. In all his planning, he made no provision for this moment, and now the thing on the table is crying and he cannot think what to do. Hungry? The assistant asks helpfully. The doctor nods, and the assistant goes to the refrigerator where he finds half of the sandwich the doctor had for dinner. Gingerly, he approaches the thing and, tearing off a small piece of corned beef on rye, nudges it between the thing's lips. It is immediately spat out, and the thing wails louder. Why? The doctor wonders. It has teeth, it can chew. After another attempt, the assistant has an idea. He takes a rubber glove, fills it with tap water, pierces one finger, and prods the finger into the thing's mouth. It sucks contentedly, making small grunting noises. When it finishes, it becomes quiet again. Now what, doctor? The assistant asks. He is longing for his bed, his fat wife warm beside him. It's as helpless as a baby. The doctor frowns. A baby? That thing on the table that measures 6.5 feet in length and weighs close to 200 pounds? What does he do now? Thinking of the thing as a baby, as something helpless, almost formless, he must revise his initial plan to take the thing on a roadshow of scientific conferences. You bring a baby into the world, you must take care of it. He sends the assistant out for baby bottles, cans of liquid nutritional supplement. As an afterthought, he adds adult diapers to the list. Already the thing has wet itself. So many things I did not think of, he realizes. Over the next week, he attempts to evaluate the thing's status. His tests confirm the thing has the musculature of an adult male, but its brain has no idea how to manage the body. He will have to teach it to hold its head up, focus, learn its own physical boundaries, walk, talk. He spends 2 days in the medical library reading monographs on rehabilitative medicine before he understands that he is looking at the problem in the wrong way. On the way back to the lab, he stops at Walden Books and buys Spock, Leach, Brazelton, dozens of books with titles like What to Expect the First Year and Your Baby and You. He reads them at night, making copious notes, lists of things to buy, to do. The thing continues to lie on the table, crying when hungry or wet or cold, looking soberly at the patterns of light thrown by sunlight in the day, fluorescent lights by night. One eye is blue, the other brown. The doctor made shift with what he could get. The doctor puts his work, his life, on hold. He spends his days and nights in the lab ministering to the thing, which he has named Willie, after his own father, whose name was Wilhelm. He sleeps as Willie's erratic schedule permits. I must train him to a more reasonable schedule, the doctor tells himself. His assistant, who has 4 children, is helpful during the day, but insists on going home to his own bed at night. Gradually, Willie begins to sleep through the night, and the doctor is able to catch 5 or 6 hours of sleep himself, on the daybed cater-corner to the lab door. He will say later that his life in this period was an endless round of changing and feeding, punctuated by naps. One night, when Willie refuses to be calmed with food or a fresh diaper, the doctor thumbs frantically through his books, wondering if this is colic or something more serious. Sometimes a child will cry because it is lonely. Comfort and cuddling are as necessary to human beings as to any other animal on the planet. He drops the book into his lap and stares at the thing lying there, weeping with harsh, heartbroken sobs. It is difficult to overcome not simply his physical revulsion at being so close to the thing, but years of training in laboratory protocol and his own strict and isolated upbringing. Finally, the doctor edges close to Willie and, with some difficulty, raises him to sitting so that the thing's head can rest on his shoulder. Awkwardly, he strokes Willie's coarse hair, murmuring, hush now, it's all right, I'm here." Willie draws a few more shuddering breaths, then sighs, nestles closer to the doctor's shoulder, and sleeps. He has discovered his thumb. Willie's physical progress is more rapid than that of ordinary children. After all, his body is that of a man, however inexpertly he may use it. Early on, for example, he's able to chew his food quite vigorously, but cannot raise his cup to his lips to drink. By 3 months, however, he is able to eat finger foods, drink from a cup, and is beginning to take awkward steps, 1 and 2 at a time. The doctor buys a video camera to record his subject's development. With all Willie's progress, the doctor is in no way certain of his own ability to accomplish the task he has taken on. How, for example, to toilet train, how to handle the terrible twos, how to explain to Willie where he came from. He can only take each day as it comes. The assistant comes less often now. The doctor sometimes forgets to write out the checks, and there are other jobs available to a man with lab training, as the assistant hurries to point out. The doctor apologizes. He's been absorbed in Willie's progress. He decides to sublet his condominium and move into the lab, where there is enough room for Willie and himself. With his own work on hold, the doctor does not apply for new grants. For a time, they live on his investments while the doctor looks for some kind of work that he can do at night after Willie is asleep. The waking hours are too precious, too vital to science. Willie said doctor yesterday. At least the doctor believes it was doctor. The sound itself was more like da-da, but the doctor feels the intent is clear. Realizing that Willie will need more social input than he himself can provide, the doctor starts to research preschool programs. The directors of several programs are sympathetic, but few feel they can accommodate a 200-pound 2-year-old who is not yet toilet trained. Finally, persevering, the doctor finds a preschool and Willie enters with the other 2-year-olds. If anything, he is shyer than most and gentle. His association with the animals in the lab has made Willie careful not to hurt creatures smaller than himself. The other children accept Willie, and while he is subject to the normal politics of infant social groups, he is no different in that way than any other child. The teacher, who began by averting her eyes and shuddering when Willie arrived for school, writes at the end of the year, "Willie is extraordinarily generous and sensitive, with a real gift for making others feel at ease. He loves to finger paint and enjoys singing with the class." In truth, Willie's voice is hideously unmusical, but neither he nor his classmates appear to care. Willie enters first grade a year late, not because he was unable to do the work, but because the doctor was forced to go to court to make the local school district admit his protege. To ensure that Willie will be well treated, and because he wishes to have some control over the educational process Willie will be subject to, the doctor becomes an active and vocal member of the PTA. He even, for a time, is a Cub Scout leader. The laboratory, its equipment long shrouded in Holland covers, is filled with Willie's stamp collection, his baseball cards, roller skates, his Lego blocks. When Willie brings home his first real report card, his ugly seamed face with the mismatched eyes and jutting brow shines with pleasure. "Look, Papa, look, I got 3 A's and 2 B's. The doctor puts his arm around Willie's shoulders, although he must stand on tiptoe to do so. "I am proud," he says quietly. Little League is another battle. Parents and coach argue that there is a real hazard to their children playing baseball with a 200-pound 9-year-old. Again, they go to court, and the judge speaks to Willie in his chambers. Willie's face shines with longing as he speaks of playing ball like the other kids. The doctor speaks, too. "I want my boy to have all the things any other child would have. What he is, I made him, quite literally. It is not his fault that he is different from other children, and it is not fair that he should be penalized for his very being." The judge rules that if accommodations can be made to safeguard the players of the opposite team, Willie may play in Little League. After the judgment, the doctor takes Willie out for hot fudge sundaes. Willie's face is a beatific smear of chocolate, whipped cream, and joy. There is no puberty per se. Willie was created an adult male. But as his schoolmates begin to go through the tremors of adolescence, Willie feels his own stirrings and confusion. The doctor again turns to books, trying to find ways to safeguard his boy against what he knows will be the inevitable disappointments. No cheerleader or beauty queen will go out with Willie. For the first time in his life, Willie looks at himself in the mirror and really sees the traces of sutures, the scars, the mismatched eyes, the haphazard arrangement of limbs. When he was building Willie, the doctor reflects, he did so without regard to the cosmetics of the situation. Were he doing it again today, he would be more careful. Willie begins to mope, spending his afternoons feeding the few remaining lab animals, doing his homework. His friends call for him, but Willie is listless, cannot be cajoled out to the mall or drive-in. The doctor talks to a few of Willie's friends and learns that the two girls Willie asked to the prom had turned him down, one gently, one without tact. The doctor is surprised at the rage that fills him. He must remind himself that rage is unproductive. Instead, he and several of Willie's friends concoct a plan whereby the youngsters will go to the prom together. Whether Willie understands the purpose of the tactic or not, he goes to the prom and has a wonderful time. The doctor waits up to hear the stories when the boy returns. Willie begins to talk about college. The doctor is not quite easy with the idea that the boy will be so far away, but feels he must support Willie's choice. For a time, the table in the laboratory is covered with college catalogs and application forms. They wait together, the doctor and Willie, and as each envelope comes, they open it with delicious anticipation. Willie is accepted everywhere he applies. His grades are good and his SATs excellent, and the universities are probably too mindful of the potential for a lawsuit to reject the boy on the grounds that he's a golem. After some discussion, Willie chooses to attend the state university, only half an hour's drive away. The doctor hides his pleasure, not wishing Willie to feel confined. Willie decides to live on campus, but most weekends he comes home and he and the doctor discuss what he is learning. His freshman year, Willie takes English theory, freshman comp, advanced French, and biology. He is gifted in languages, and his French accent is particularly good. The subject of girls arises again more than once. Willie has girl friends, but no girlfriend. Privately, the doctor feels some anger. Stupid females, can't they see past Willie's physical defects to the loving and worthwhile person his boy has become? Willie does not blame the girls, but he is lonely. Finally, one weekend, he sits with the doctor after dinner and begins to talk seriously. "Father, make a girl for me." The doctor shakes his head. "No, Willie, I cannot." He explains that even if he were to assemble the parts, disinter the lab equipment, and duplicate his feat of 20 years before, Willie would still have to wait until the girl grew up. "That was my error, not realizing that you would need to be raised like any other child, my boy. If I built a wife for you, who would raise her?" He holds up his hands to the light, paper thin and bony. The raised veins and wrinkled flesh of age. "I'm not a young man, Willie. I could not do it again." Willie won't hear. He rises from his chair and says, "If you loved me, you'd do it," and storms out. They are estranged for some time afterward. At night, alone on the daybed in the laboratory, the doctor wonders, should I have said yes? Was he asking such a little thing that I should have said yes? But he knows he is right. Lately, he's taken to monitoring the sinus rhythms of his heart, and he's sure he could not undertake to raise another child. It is lonely at the laboratory without Willie's phone calls and Willie's weekend visits. The doctor's heart is heavy, but his pride will not let him call the boy. Willie's graduation comes and goes. The doctor has to call the university to learn that the boy was graduated with high honors and distinction in his major field, French literature. He sends Willie a Mont Blanc pen with a note and tells himself not to mind too much if he hears nothing back. But Willie calls, his voice tentative and cautious. The doctor invites him for dinner and Willie accepts. Over dinner, "I want to hear how you've been doing," the doctor says heartily. And Willie tells him about playing football, about finishing his thesis, about graduate school in the fall. "The university has offered me a teaching assistantship," he says proudly. "Another scholar in the family." The doctor is delighted, slightly drunk and filled with German sentimentality. He throws his arm around Willie's shoulders and says, "I am proud of you, my son." He does not notice that Willie stoops to permit the embrace. The doctor is indeed getting old. They fall again into the old pattern of phone calls and weekend visits. Willie gets his master's degree and while working toward a PhD is offered an instructorship in the French department. He becomes a popular teacher. "The word on campus," he tells the doctor, "is that I'm gross to look at, but I really understand Racine." Willie chuckles as he quotes. The doctor, regarding his son, does not quite understand the reference. Gross to look at? The students now require their teachers to be Adonises, he wonders. Willie calls it midweek to say that he'll be coming down on Friday this week and bringing someone. His tone, to the doctor's sensitive ears, is resonant with excitement. A girl, the doctor thinks, at last. On Friday, Willie's car pulls into the parking lot in mid-afternoon. The doctor watches from his office upstairs as Willie parks, goes around to the passenger side door, and opens it for his companion. Such manners, he thinks. The girl stands and takes Willie's arm in a way both firm and affectionate. She has shoulder-length red hair and stands only as high as Willie's breast pocket. The doctor takes pleasure in the warmth of the smile she gives his son. Still smiling himself, he leaves his office and goes downstairs to greet the arrivals. Only when they are face to face does the doctor realize that the girl is blind. It's a good weekend. The girl, Gwen, knows all about Willie's background and is not troubled by it. For his part, Willie seems to enjoy taking care of Gwen in little ways. Is she good enough for Willie? The doctor reminds himself that he would have misgivings about any match his son made. Gwen is a fine girl, and Willie loves her. When Willie tells him they want to marry, the doctor is prepared. He puts a hand on each of their shoulders and gives them his blessing. The wedding takes place in the University Arboretum and is attended by friends and colleagues of Willie's and Gwen's. Willie still keeps up his friendships from grade school, scouts, and high school, as well as with his co-workers and friends from college days. After the ceremony, when the bride and groom are making their way around the crowd collecting good wishes, the doctor chats with this person, then that. Everyone says what a fine man Willie is, and the doctor agrees. He talks animatedly with members of the science faculty who are there. Several of them profess to have read his monographs from years before. It is only as he walks away that he hears the associate professor of anatomy say to his colleagues, "So that's what became of him. A brilliant mind, despite his crackpot theories." And then he just dropped out of the scientific community. The colleague nods. Just couldn't keep up with the field, I suppose. They walk away to get more punch. Willie and Gwen live in faculty housing on campus. Twice a month, they visit the doctor, bringing the baby with them. Watching his son with the baby, the doctor thinks sentimentally, "Were you ever so tiny?" Then feels foolish, remembering the effort with which, long ago, he had gathered his massive son into a similar embrace. He finds in time that handling little Alice is no more difficult. Sometimes the doctor watches over her so her parents can go hear a concert or take a walk alone together. When she's fed and changed, the doctor raises her into the crook of his arm, so very tiny, he thinks, and hums rustily to her. Sometimes he strokes her silky hair and murmurs, hush now, it's all right, I'm here." The baby watches him with trusting eyes and falls asleep. Rather embarrassingly, when I finished this story, I gave it to my husband to read, and he said, "Oh, it's great to see that you're using your experience of motherhood." This had not occurred to me at the time at all. I thought I was just responding to Frankenstein and how much the doctor has always pissed me off. So there you go. Self-knowledge, not my forte.
I like this doctor so much more.
Oh, yeah, well, definitely.
Me too. What a great story.
Thank you. It's one of my favorites. My therapist from years ago said it was her 7-year-old son's favorite bedtime story for about 6 months. I'm still, mumble years later, parsing that one, but
I think it's wonderful that she trusted the story to her child like that.
I was startled. It was not the first thing I would have thought of to read to a 7-year-old, but then 7-year-olds are weird.
Wonderful.
Yeah, but there's nothing inappropriate in it,
No,
and there's a good heart to it. So
I don't think I have any of my stories that would be suitable 7-year-old.
well, my children were always sort of like, not only tell me a story, no, make up a story, but if I had to chaperone a field trip or something, they would turn around to their classmates and say, "If you give my mom 3 things, she'll make you up a story." And I would wind up telling stories about peanut butter and dinosaurs and hefty trash bags or something. And the weirder, the better.
Songs.
What?
I do the same with songs. My kids figured out early on that if they gave me whatever, I would write a song about it in real time right there. I also took requests for drawings. They wanted stuff to color, so I would draw black and white drawings with whatever, My Little Pony and Snoopy in the same picture. Who cares, right? Whatever. So I did that. I've only done a couple of stories for them that way. Although one of my 8-year-olds has read Kraken's Wake and she liked it very much.
It's a good story. It's worth liking.
I had it out I had a printout of the galleys, original galleys, from just sitting next to my laptop when I was writing the prequel. And so she comes like, "What's this, Daddy?" And so I'm like, "Well, I think you're old enough. Go for it." And she liked it. So
For the longest time, my older daughter in particular would not read anything of mine because she was absolutely terrified that there would be sex in it. And she'd be completely
And Mom?
oh my God, my mother has a sex life. And with maybe 2 or 3 exceptions, I cannot think of anything of mine that has a whole lot of embarrass your daughter type content, but she was just convinced that she'd turn a corner and there it would be and her life would be ruined. So,
well, you did start with Regency romances, so
well, yeah,
completely crazy.
but they were what the industry calls sweet romances. There was no sex for reasons not having to do with my being opposed to sex, but mostly because of what the actual costs were of having sex outside of marriage in their days. Bridgerton to the contrary.
Yes, well, Sarah Tolerance can tell you a lot about that too.
And does.
Book after book.
Well, Daniel, we've had another set of lovely stories tonight.
I'll see.
Well, thank you very much for listening.
It's our pleasure to have you. Thank you so much, both of you. Madeleine, Cliff, you've really made this a lovely evening. And next week, we have Jordan Corella and Mina Lee. So everyone, you can keep up to date about upcoming authors at storyhour2020.com, and you can see any story hours you may have missed on the Story Hour page on Facebook. So, thank you so much, both of you, for reading. Daniel, thank you for being a wonderful co-host and founding Story Hour in the first place. He's the reason we're all here. And thank you, all of you who have been coming to Story Hour, all of you who've tuned in for the first time. Thank you all for joining us in Spinning the Fictive Dream.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for having us, Daniel and Lara. Thank you, everyone who came.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.